attention to your commanding officer. Next month, we have a few opportunities for cadets to join the glider flying program. All those interested in applying, one pace forward, march. I was there when I was 14. I was a cadet in the Air Training Corps. That's the RAF for teenagers. As I recall, I was scared witless as I was being strapped into the passenger seat of this old RAF glider. And we were only airborne for less than 10 minutes, but I can remember the absolute elation of flying, of experiencing the miracle of flight for myself for the very first time. But the thing I learned from that experience is that the most important part of any flight is the landing. I'm a leadership specialist, and I work with business leaders and executives, and I find they fall into one of three camps. Either they're in their comfort zone and everything's under control, or they're in the delusion zone when they're striving for something quite unachievable, or they're in their inspiration zone when they're being stretched to reach for something new and exciting. For me as a cadet, to take the controls of the glider whilst in the air was in the inspiration zone. To be expected to land the glider on my first flight was clearly in the delusion zone. The pilot explained it takes a lot of practice to land a glider, but the key to a successful landing is to focus on where you're landing. Let me give you another example. A few years ago, I was chatting with my friend John, who runs the local charity, and he said to me, "Hey Rog, I've been thinking about this year's fundraising programme, and how about if we get a few of us together to do a parachute jump?" I said, "That's a fantastic idea. I've always wanted to do a parachute jump. You can count me in." And in the end, 5 of us signed up to do the jump. I can remember the drive across to the airfield now. And if you'd have been sat with us in John's dark blue Land Rover Discovery, you'd have heard all sorts of witty banter and bravado, and we all sounded pretty confident and excited. Then as we arrived at the airfield and turned into the entrance, the car fell strangely silent as we spotted the plane we'd be jumping out of that weekend. We spent the day learning about everything that could possibly go wrong with jumping out of a plane. The instructor explained sometimes when you jump, the parachute can get caught on the side of the plane, and I'll have to clamber down and cut us both free. Other times your lines can get twisted, and you'll have to learn how to kick out with your legs in order to untwist the lines so the parachute can deploy properly. Well, I glanced across at John, and he looked as worried as I felt. Spent the rest of the day practicing things like how to release the emergency parachute and how to land at speed without breaking anything. And at the end of the day, having learned how to jump safely, we all went home and came back the next day to have our go. When our turn came, we went out to collect our parachutes and we strapped them on. And we followed the instructor out to the plane where we all clambered aboard. We took off, and before long we were up to the cruising height. As we approached the drop zone, the instructor indicated I should move into position. So I slid across the floor of the plane. I sat perched right on the edge of the doorway, legs dangling in midair, scared out of my wits. And the instructor shouted, "Jump!" And I leapt out of the plane. I spread my arms and legs and looked up to see the parachute, and my lines had got twisted, and I had to do that kick-out thing with my legs. And finally, the parachute deployed. And there I was, suspended in midair. All I could hear was the wind rushing past my ears, and it felt like I was flying. As I was coming into land, I recalled the advice I'd been given the day before. And that was to focus right on the center of the target. Apparently, you tend to land where you're looking. Well, that was great advice. And before long, I came into land right on target. Well, I'd done it. I'd done my parachute jump. And I'd learned a great lesson for life. If you look where you're landing, you'll land where you're looking. Thank you.